Hey you guys, so I thought it would be fun to take you through a few of the essential art books that I have in my library. So let's get started. I'm going to take my tablet away, take a sip of tea. So let's go through some books. So first and foremost, I want to get a really important book out of the way. And that is the Artists and Graphic Designers Market 2017 edition. The new one, I don't know if it's come out yet, but I bought a version of this book back in 2014. And it pretty much tells you how to, it gives you guides on, how to start selling your art, what prices you should do, artist assistance and management. And then in the back is a full-blown directory listing you to galleries, magazines, publishers, advertisers, galleries, just other artists and everything else that you could possibly need to help you, especially if you want to make art your full-time gig. I haven't really gotten a chance to pour through it a lot. My 2017 and 2016 were incredibly busy. But I'm looking forward to settling down and making this a big priority this year and possibly getting the new revised edition. Definitely check this out, especially if you're really serious that you want to make art your full-time career. And what I really like about this is that, so let's see, I'm going to go to greeting cards, book publishers. Okay, so Candlewick Press. First contact in terms, and then text illustration, and then in some cases they'll tell you tips on what they might want in a portfolio or what they might like, and it's such a handy book to have. So put this on your Amazon wish list and make sure you get it. Actually, let me put this in order. So the next series of books that I have are Understanding and Making Comics, both by Scott McCloud, who is a very, very informative, seasoned comic creator who made these books pretty much trying to view comics as a legitimate art form, which to many artists alike, it's not. And I find that, me personally, because I actually wrote my senior thesis paper on comics as kind of an art form. I made them propaganda art, mostly focusing back on the comics from World War II and World War I, and how many of our big staple characters like Wonder Woman, Captain America came from those eras, and how they kind of led a legacy of I'm going off topic, but in this book, he makes it a graphic novel, which is great because that shows you he's using what he understands as kind of one of a master of a medium and using it to explain to you, so that way you don't have to guess with just full pages of text. You can actually see what he's talking about being used in action. Understanding comics is pretty much getting you to, understand comics and how they function as both words and art. Because, you can have a good comic that maybe doesn't have great art, but you can't have a comic that has great art, but the story and the writing is all over the place. That, you're going to lose people. And so it's about balancing, about just understanding things, even going to symbolism. And this whole thing, I actually had this book a while ago, and my art teacher in high school wanted to scan pages from it. And it goes into icons and symbols and what we can perceive as a human. This is really a good art school book. If you can't afford art school or you don't want to bother with it, you can get this and read the first couple of chapters on this, and it would be a great art theory lesson. Definitely pick it up. And also, if you're actually interested in making comics, which I am, stay tuned for that. Making comics helps you understand that, from flow, pacing, and movement to framing to making stories for people, stories for humans. It's such an informative book. And there's another one that I don't have, but definitely pick up the trilogy when you have the chance. This series and another comic making series by Will Eisner, who is legit one of the masters of comics. Definitely pick up his books. I don't have them yet, but I do plan on getting them. Now, one book that I have not read yet, but have heard great things about, are how to make web comics. Because in all honesty, web comics are kind of going the way of other internet mediums, where they're being more noticed by the mainstream. Kind of like how podcasts now are getting either internet shows, like the Lore podcast had a series on Hulu, and now Welcome to Night Vale's network are getting a couple of shows based off their podcasts, and other stuff like that. And more affluent and famous people are now moving on to the medium. Shoot, even one comic that I know a lot of you like that I actually just found out about, Check Please, is actually getting printed. Like, this version was done by the original author Ngozi, who was a very lovely, nice woman. Met her at C2E2. Definitely check out her comic. But she's actually getting published by a publisher and being put in a store. But she started as a web comic, and she published this by herself. So if you do want to go into comics making, definitely consider web comics, because it is a viable art form and a good way to be noticed. One book about comics and writing that I do frequent back to, even though that I just got it, I literally tore through it the moment I got, and that is Manga and Theory and Practice, done by, yes, that's right, JoJo Bizarre Adventure creator Araki Sensei. Sorry, pardon me. But this book, because the man has his comic or manga, whatever you call it, I'm gonna call it a comic for consistency's sake. His comic, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, has not only been made into an anime series with 4 parts, I believe, but it is still going on after starting back in the 1980s. That is some dedication for your ass right there. And here he pretty much divulges his secrets finally for an English-speaking audience. And one thing that I always find interesting, and even bookmarked it, was his character history page. Like, this is so in-depth, and I recommend that if you are, especially if you want to get your characters more detailed, definitely at least look up this sheet. He goes into kind of like, especially with long form stories and even his own beginnings and trying to understand how like sequential art worked with his Poker Under Arms first short comic. So definitely pick that up. And yeah, I read this so fast, and I look forward to reading this in the future, especially soon. Okay, so like I said earlier, I do want to make a comic very soon. So I have a lot of comic books, including the complete guide to self-publishing comics, which, like I said before, especially in this day and age where it is very easy to show off your artwork and be able to self-publish. Thank you, Kickstarter and Indiegogo and all those places. It's a good thing that guys like this exist, so that way you don't completely know you don't completely not know what you're getting into. I've flipped through this book. I haven't made it all the way through yet, but so far from what I've been reading, it is very informative. I believe it's been a while. I was reading this between lunch breaks at work. I believe I was up to, I think, Color Theory. A lot of this is pretty much, at least for me, refreshing what I remember and what I already know from what I've learned pretty much just at school. But I took a lot of art classes like back in high school, and then I went to college for art. So, if you don't, this would be a good book, especially if you don't know a lot about that. Like if you went to school for something else but are really interested in art or making comics or something like that, mostly from the art end. Then I would definitely recommend this, mostly for the first half, because I have not read it all the way through yet. And I know you're probably thinking, this bitch is going to keep showing us books she didn't read through. Now hold on, those were only 2. The rest I have read. But I just wanted to stress their importance. such as reference books. That's right, reference books are something every artist, I believe, should have in their studio. This one, 3,200 old-timey cuts and ornaments. I actually bought this and another bigger reference book I can't find right now for a printmaking class in college. But in all honesty, this kind of stuff, like these ornamental things and just all this can make good reference. You scan some of these on the computer, you can use them later as engravings, or even just kind of use them as guides if you want a similar picture or something like that. Like, just scan it up into the computer and you can always have it. It's always there. Stuff like this is great to have. So one big book that I actually got back in high school that helped me out a lot, and even my old teacher, my old high school teacher, wanted to use it as guides to hand out to the class at the time for my AP art class, is The Complete Guide to Drawing. This book really helps you with figure drawings, and especially structuring the face, especially if you want to go for a more realistic look. Not realism where you're trying to trick the eye almost into thinking that, you know, what you're doing is a photograph, you know, in a way, but just trying to make it look a bit more real, a bit more defined, you know, or at least just helping you to not make it look wobbly. Because this whole thing goes in depth with portraiture, hands, but not too in depth. One thing that I really love is that they actually give you bone and muscle anatomy in here for different things, and like the body proportions, skeletal and muscle structures, even a little bit on clothing and how it folds on bodies is great. This is all just very basic stuff. I highly recommend, like I said before, to read this if you didn't go to art school, or if you haven't taken a lot of art classes but are interested in drawing and wanting to improve. Definitely pick this up. Helped me a lot in high school. Helped me a lot with my portraitures, because I do love doing portraits, and this helped a lot. And one book that I had been waiting to get my hands on till I had the money is one of two done by the great Andrew Loomis, and that is, well, you can't see it up here, but this is gonna be a weird shot. It's called Figure Drawing for All It's Worth, and it's done by Andrew Loomis. This book is really, really informative. Like, I've read through this and this book had to be written, I believe, in the 1940s. When was this originally made? Yeah, 1943. During a time where a lot of advertisements had mostly been hand painted or hand drawn for the longest time. The longest time. And only now, with the fact that photography was getting more easily available, they started switching over to that. But that's a different topic for a different day. But, like, he goes into proportion wises, and this is a bit more on the illustrative side. So that works a lot, you know, that works really well for me. But unlike the other drawing guide I just showed, this one goes very in depth, showing you different sizing for, like, a normal character, idyllic, fashion proportions, or heroic proportions at various ages. Like I said, this book is probably better if you are an illustrator or want to go into illustration. One thing, though, I really love is that he goes into perspective. I've always had a problem with perspective. I never really, this is going to sound horrible, but I never really truly learned multiple point perspective or room perspective back in school, because my elementary school art teacher sucked ass. And then when I got to high school, they already expected that I should know multiple point perspective, but I didn't. So I've been having to try and I have to be self-taught. But this book has helped so much. And I especially recommend this book if you are going into comics, because when you have to like frame something, like I said before with advertisements back in the day, you had to be really well at framing so you could get everything and convey what you want and know how to focus or whatever it is you wanted to do, show up the product. And this really helps. This helps so much. It even goes into the mannequin frame in different like, this book is so informative, you guys. This book is probably one of the better purchases that I have made in my art book collection. I'm not gonna lie. Definitely seek it out if you can, when you can. It's pretty expensive, but if you can do it, put it on your Amazon wish list. Do something. Tell Santa you want it this year for Christmas. It's an excellent buy, and I highly recommend it. Okay, so now we're gonna get into actual art books, like the art of kind of books. And the three that I have are actually ones I don't think that you would expect. So the first one that I'm going to show to you all is The Hobbit. I actually got this as a birthday gift from my friend Sydney. I think she signed it. Yep. Here it is on the side. I was really into The Hobbit at the time when the movies came out. I was going to do it they came out around the time of my birthday, and I thought that would be a fun birthday thing to do for a while. One thing that I really liked about this, and I still kind of like, is books like this, like art of books, give you really in-depth kind of looks into how certain atmospheres, props, things like that are created. Now, this isn't really this is a visual companion. It's not a art of book, I guess I should say. An art of book would actually go into a lot more detail. But for me, especially with that, like, this is enough for me. Because unless it's an animated, I would more want an animated movie. Or like a stop motion movie, like a Kubo and Two Strings, to be an actual art guide. But this works very well for me when it comes to live action stuff. I can deal with that. One book that I just got toward the end of last year that I have torn through time and time again is something that brings me great rushes of nostalgia and pride to own, and that is the Batman, the animated series art book. Yes, it is still out there. You can go try to find it. I love Tim Kane's art style so much, you guys, so much. And this book is honestly amazing. I've always, when I was younger, I really loved the art style of the Batman shows, this kind of art deco 1920s Gotham aesthetic. I've always really just loved it, and it just spoke to me, you know? Like, look at this, and the layout of the book is so great and just so expansive, and it even goes into the animated the new season that they had, and just, I would recommend, if you can find this book, please do, because it even goes into designing the villains and the heroes, even in the redesigns when they had the new season with Tim Drake as Robin, like, just, they're all so interesting, and it's so good, you guys. Like, just this one little bit here with the use of color, only 1, 2, 3 main colors and maybe a differentiation of hues, and they've conveyed so much already on this page. Just and actually, speaking of color, I'm going to bring back Araki and show you JoJo 2651. Now, this is one of the older books back when JoJo had 6,251 pages, and he was dealing with the Diamond is Unbreakable arc. And many of you might notice that this is actually my screensaver. But one thing that I appreciate with Araki is that he always knows how to work with colors. I think one thing that I really love is just his natural tendency to use colors. The man has no fear. He has no fear. You know, say what you want about his body proportions or anything like that, and his almost misuse of anatomy, but it's funny because he mentions in his manga making book that he says once you get down the basics of anatomy and you understand the rules, then you can break them, which is a great thing to always keep in mind. I've heard that phrase countless times in my life. He's not the one to originate it, but I'm glad he put it in that book, because I think a lot of people who just want to do stuff like this off the bat, they end up screwing up what their idea of anatomy is. You have to know how the body functions on a regular before you can start doing JoJo poses all the time. But this book I got, like I said before, because Araki he just plays with color, whether it be monochromatic, complementary. The man just is not afraid to do that, and at weird angles, and it gives you, especially with this work, when he did it, it was in like the 80s and the 90s, and it has that aesthetic. He somehow manages to capture the aesthetic of whatever time period he's kind of drawing in. And a lot of this focuses, of course, on, I think, one of his more popular arcs in JoJo, being Stardust Crusaders. This book, if you can find it, because I had to import it from Japan, is actually, I just really love it. I think I like it more when he starts to use these warmer complementary colors, especially when we get to the images with Josuke. Very 90s. That's all I can say. But I love it. Although I do have a plea. If anybody has a translated section for the back part of this book, where it even goes into his older work, and they have an encyclopedia for what had happened beforehand. But I don't know Japanese. I can't read this. And there's an interview with him, but I can't read Japanese. If anybody has a translation for this, please send it to me. Please. How much? What's that? The price? I don't know. I didn't take too much out of here. But I guess the last thing that I have to show you all in regards to guides are probably some of the more easier ones that you can get your hands on, especially if you're young, maybe a high school student, maybe you don't have a lot of money, and I'm not gonna lie, these are still expensive, but if you can spare it, like if you could save up for the month and get it, depending on your situation, I would highly suggest you get an Imagine FX magazine. I normally I follow their page, so I look and see what issues I want, and then I have to go out to a specific Barnes & Noble because they're the only ones that carry it, and I get it. This one dealt with myths and legends. I don't know if you can see that. This one dealt with pinup art. I find that Imagine FX really does have a lot of good tips and tricks in there, especially depending on the whatever subject it is that you want to focus on. I feel like they can be really good, really informative, and they also give you links to like blocked off YouTube videos where you can go more in depth with whatever it is that they give you, like here, workshops, and these little icons right here show you like video links that you can get. It normally will come with like once you buy the magazine, there'll be like a little link or something that you can use to go and get the video to help, the companion video to go along with the article. And they do feature a lot of artists in here. They even, for those of you, because this is mostly digital art, this is exclusively digital art in the front section, but they also have a traditional section in the back, where even the whole tone of the feeling of the paper change, which is amazing. So I definitely recommend that if you are strapped on cash, and if you can at least save up $20 then I would do that. If you can actually save up for a subscription, that would probably be the best, because I don't really want a subscription, and I just need certain like I just want certain issues. I don't bother. But definitely check them out. Check them out. I mean, look at all this crazy shit. Isn't it great? But yeah, so this has been pretty much all the books that I have on art as of now. I might come back, who knows, next year if my collection has grown a bit. I'll let you all know, and especially like if you like this and want another one. I don't know, maybe I'll take you through my comics collection. I have a lot of comic books. I haven't been buying them a lot as of late, but I have a lot of comic books. If you like what I do and you want to help support, go follow my Facebook page at KylaTea Art, and go follow my Instagram at Shappy Drawings. And you know what? If you really want to help out, why not buy me a cup of coffee? Head on over to my coffee page. It's pretty much a digital tip jar. You can leave $3. Yes, a one-time $3 tip. It would mean the world to me, and it would help me out like you don't know. So thank you all for watching. I greatly appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.